Hi guys, this is The Constant Show where we talk about movies, and I am Constant, a Scrabble playing chicken hawk. And this week, I think I might have solved Disney's greatest mystery.
Shang's sexuality?
No.
What kind of shampoo does Beast use?
No, but that's a good question.
Bug's life?
Fair.
How many spots do 101 Dalmatians have?
A lot. But none of those. This week we're going to talk about Toy Story, and more specifically, how do the toys work again? So before I break down for you how exactly the toys go in Toy Story, I first have to catch you up on some philosophy. Oh, thanks, Minion. Oh, sorry. Excuse me, sir. Maybe you want to bring it back up here. So you can plainly see that that's not a straight line, right? And we all intuitively have an understanding of what it means for something to be a straight line, even though none of us have ever seen one. If you looked at any line at a microscopic level, you would see imperfections in it that would mean that it's not perfectly or true straight. So how do we have that conception of that idea without ever having experience of it? For this, Plato came up with his idea of forms. An easy way to think of forms is through Legos. With Legos, each individual part is its own thing, but they also form a greater whole. We have the individual form of Commissioner Gordon, but each of these pieces can be removed and analyzed separately. If toys are alive, I feel really bad for this. I'm sorry. The forms can be simple, like a straight line, or complex, like a car, which is made up of smaller other forms. So Aristotle expanded on Plato's idea of forms, and he was extremely concerned with what makes one thing a thing and another thing not a thing. What makes Batman Batman and Superman Superman. What he came up with was the idea of properties, namely essential properties that are integral to the structure of the being, and accidental properties which can be changed without altering the form. Aristotle would expand these ideas into what is known as hylomorphism, which basically holds that being is matter plus form. Matter, in Aristotle's thinking, is contextual. The example I've seen given is that clay is matter to a brick is matter to a house, and a house is matter to a neighborhood. Matter is the parts that the whole is composed of.
What does any of that have to do with Toy Story?
Pretty much everything, because the Toy Story universe operates at least partially off of a theory of forms. For our purposes, we can think of it as a Platonic library that the Toy Story universe is drawing inspiration from. This is the reason that Toy Story soldiers operate using actual squad-based tactics. It's the reason that a slinky dog can talk to a real dog. It's the reason that Buzz's codes are uniform enough that Buzz Lightyear in Toy Story 2 can actually talk to another Buzz and get him to do stuff just by uttering a code. Let's break down the key facts that we know about the Toy Story universe and the form that the toys employ. First, all toys, even toys that don't know they're toys, such as Buzz Lightyear in Toy Story 1 and Forky in Toy Story 4, remain idle when people are present. Throughout the Toy Story universe, this rule is only broken a singular time in Toy Story 1, but we'll get back to that. Second, a toy's personality, behavior patterns, and identity are all at least partially derived from what they come out of the box as. In Toy Story 1, there's this scene where Buzz is fixing his spaceship, and they go to give him some tape, but he calls it extra-dimensional bonding adhesive. His entire mentality is at least partially derived from that form of being Buzz Lightyear. Third, the toys are aware of their status as toys, and as such, 4, almost every single toy in the series wants to be played with by a kid. Just for quick reference, it's Woody's motivation in Toy Story 1, Jesse's motivation in Toy Story 2, Lotso's motivation in Toy Story 3, and what do you know, surprise surprise, Gabby's motivation in Toy Story 4. We can consider these 4 as essential properties of what it means to be a toy in the Toy Story universe. However, these do not account for the sum total of behavior that we see in the toys in the Toy Story universe. Some really good examples of this are Woody acting against his form as the sheriff, by deceptively trying to push Buzz Lightyear off of the dresser. Buzz develops feelings of attraction for Jessie, who is a cowboy doll, so it's like a totally different thing. For reference, we can see that even romance is a part of toy design and toy form. In Toy Story 1 at the very end, there's a Christmas like walkie-talkie part where Miss Potato Head is automatically assumed to be with Mr. Potato Head. They treat it as like a, hey, you're getting married kind of thing, despite the fact that these two toys are just now meeting. In Toy Story 3, Mr. Potato Head adopts the aliens that came out of the claw machine. They call him Dad, he's cool with it, he's like, oh, my children. And 4, Miss Bo Peep becoming a lost toy in Toy Story 4. So how do we explain this other behavior? Well, I think that there's a second force in the Toy Story universe that's kind of more chaotic than our Platonic Library. For our purposes, we'll consider it as the claw. Interesting to note, when Aristotle was developing his theory, he thought that intellect was something that was separate of the form of person. And I think the claw is what provides the toys with their actual being. The best example for the claw being true is that at the end of Toy Story 1, there's a scene where Woody actually spins his head around in front of a person, breaking the coremost rule of what it means to be a toy. Then he actually says lines that aren't in his voice programming. This is interesting to note because in Toy Story 4, Gabby specifically needs Woody's voice box in order to speak to a person. So we can consider this rule almost like sacrilegious, I guess, to toys. They do tease the idea of breaking it in Toy Story 4, but the toys immediately shut it down with no explanation for why they would. I also think that in Toy Story, objects carry an inert existential momentum at all times. So the key to this is that in Toy Story 4, we actually see something get sentience for the first time. The little girl puts together a fork and some googly eyes, and then next thing you know, it's alive as a toy. Whenever it is alive, the first thing that it wants to do is throw itself away. It's not a fork that wants to be used to eat, but instead, it's a fork that wants to be thrown away because it recognizes its status as trash innately. No one has told Forky that it's trash at this point. Instead, he just knows it. And I think the reason for this is that the claw is sort of rewriting the Platonic Library as things have happened. So that once you've shifted to a certain point of existence, a certain form, the amount of forms that you have left to access to change. Upon activation, they know the immediate existential momentum that they have, and then they cater to that form. Afterwards, the claw moves them into a different direction. So a really easy way to think of the distinction is there's a conversation that Lotso and Ken have in Toy Story 3 where Lotso says, she's a Barbie, there's a million more just like her. And what he's talking about is essentially the Platonic Library, the endless collection of infinite Barbie shapes that you would see walking down a toy store aisle. Ken responds, not like her. He's referring to the individualized aspects of this Barbie, the same fashionista that in this movie would tear up a bunch of clothes as a way of doing things for her friend. In Toy Story, your existence is changed, and then the form itself is changed. Both move along, sort of adapting at the same rate. The best evidence for this is in Toy Story 3, Buzz actually gets reset. And it's suggested that his memory is going to be gone vaguely, but when he reboots, despite rebooting in a Spanish language and having no idea who the rest of the cast is, he's still immediately drawn to Jessie. This is the claw half of his personality. The force of chaos, the intellect that Aristotle talked about, the part that isn't dependent on the shape of the being. It's almost like once you get out of the box and stop being mint condition, you're free to be anything that your current form will allow.
Mm-hmm.
And like, comment, subscribe so that the toys will give me back my freedom.